Hello, good evening. My name is Mark Pratt, and this is my presentation of my written assignment for session 5 in communication skills. My presentation is on water and the quality of our drinking water and where it comes from. So, has anybody ever enjoyed a nice cool glass of water after working hard outside in the sunshine? If you've noticed, our water is odorless, colorless, and tasteless. I can tell you for myself that working out on the ranch, coming in after a hard day's work, it's nothing more refreshing than a nice cold glass of water. But if we think about where our water comes from, in the sunny Southern California, our water source is mainly derived from the Colorado River, and it is shipped via a bunch of pipelines and aqueducts all the way from the Colorado River to Riverside, and then from Riverside piped down to San Diego County to a series of aqueducts and pipes, and then stored in reservoirs. Then later shipped to treatment facilities to be processed and changed into drinking water. Besides the Colorado River, there are a few other places we get our drinking water, some from Northern California, but also the desalination plant that was recently built in the Carlsbad area. So we're going to review some of the purification processes that are necessary to change raw water into drinking water. By the way, I'm a steam fitter. I work for a mechanical contractor whose specialty is plumbing, pipe fitting, and sheet metal in the comfort heating and cooling industry. So I have a little bit of experience and knowledge into the piping industry and what it takes to deliver the piping and the processes it takes to ensure clean water on the potable side and the non-potable side. We'll go into that in a little more detail soon. So, touching again on where our water comes from an agreement made from the Metropolitan Water District and these other agencies, like I said, the Colorado River, the Imperial Irrigation District, the All-American Canal, and the Coachella Canal, and then once again the desalination plant. Water is based on, the measurement of water is based on acre foot. And you ask how much is an acre foot? That's about 325,900 gallons of water equals 1 acre foot, or approximately the size of a football field, 1 foot deep. That's about an acre foot of water. And an acre foot of water is enough water to supply 2 family households enough water for a year. Those family households are 4 persons each. The Colorado River, the Colorado River Aqueduct was originally started by FDR back in the Great Depression. And he had the military build this and start building it. It was also a public works program for people to keep working in that troubled time of our American history. And at one time, it provided jobs for 30,000 workers, up to, I believe it was 20,000 workers at one time, but overall it was 30,000 workers that were employed doing it. The Colorado River Canal, the aqueduct, runs about 242 miles from the Colorado River all the way to Riverside, California, to its final destination in the reservoir there. In 1955, the American Society of Civil Engineers gave the recognition to the construction of the Colorado River Aqueduct as being one of the 7 modern civil engineering wonders. Quite a feat, because it wasn't all downhill because water seeks its own level. It just didn't flow gravity from Colorado River to Riverside. There were a number of obstacles and hills and valleys and passes it had to overcome. So there had to do all these pumping stations and lift stations along the way. And so it was a really incredible engineering marvel. After the water goes to Riverside and it's brought down to San Diego, one of the places that it is stored and waiting for processing is the Alvarado Water Treatment Facility. And at that facility, they went and built the largest pre-stressed concrete reservoir at the Alvarado Treatment Facility. So they treat the water and they store it in this huge reservoir. It's the world's largest, and it holds anywhere between 44 million and 77 million gallons, depending on the amount of rainfall we get. They leave a certain amount of unused area so that they have room for expansion. All water that is brought into our area, or most counties, and held in reservoirs is considered raw water prior to treatment. That water is not meant for consumption per se. If you can recall back to when you were young, I don't know how many of you participated in going to 6th grade camp, but if you remember that the camp leaders or the counselors would take you out on little nature walks, and they'd show you a little babbling brook or a little stream of water, and they would emphasize that a little pond or a stagnant pool of water was not a healthy source of water, whereas a brook where the water was fast moving across the rocks was more than likely a better source of drinking water. So that was one way to judge, because they would take a little sample out of the pond and you would see the little critters and mosquito larvae and other moss and algae growing in it, whereas in the streams and brooks, you'd take a glass of water and it would be relatively clear. So in the raw water, as it's traveled from Colorado River to Riverside and down into our reservoirs, it accumulates a number of pollutants, let's say. There's anything from industrial dyes used in the garment industry to microorganisms as runoff, all the way to heavy metals that are used in construction and also runoff from the roads and stuff. Metals such as cadmium or cobalt. There's mercury and chromium and lead. All these things are found in our drinking water prior to treatment. So at the treatment facilities, these are the things that the people have to filter out and get down to an acceptable level for consumption. We talked earlier about the terms potable and non-potable water. Potable water is water that is meant for consumption and contact with your body and things that can be absorbed through your mucous membranes. Non-potable water would be anything not suitable for that. In 1972, there was a Clean Water Act that helped ensure that counties and municipalities and states had access to clean water, and it gave the states the jurisdiction over the quality of their water. It also had direct influence on international boundaries in San Diego County. We just happen to share the border with Mexico. And it's a big deal during rainy season, especially, that there's a sewage treatment plant on the Mexican side that always overflows and contaminates the ocean right in Imperial Beach. And there's always concern about that. It closes the beach as well as people get sick. The fact that we have a desalination plant was brought into light and a series of concern for a lot of people. But the desalination plant in Carlsbad is roughly 51 miles from that inlet from the Mexican sewage treatment plant. So it's not in a place where it would contribute or harm production of clean water at that facility. There are other methods to purify water. The Journal of Science recommends that there are iodine method, where it's basically taking a quantity of water and adding iodine tablets to it for a period of time, and then you do tests and you come to where the water is clean. There's a chlorine method as well, it's similar. The easiest method to make water clean is to boil it. You boil it, bring it up to a boiling action for a period of time, and then you let it cool, and you have boiled out the impurities. And depending on the time, it'll also get microorganisms out. Then another method of purification is distillation of the water, the raw water. And most bottled water is actually a distilled water process. There's another method of purification called reverse osmosis, an RO system. And that takes a series of membrane filters and it forces the water through that to trap any impurities and particles and organisms that may be in the water, and it filters them out. The term non-potable water comes from, well, there's a few different types. One type is where they take wastewater from our sewage plants and they filter it as best they can and treat it to a level that is clean enough to be used for irrigation purposes only. You'll see alongside the roadways, there are signs that says non-potable water or reclaimed water. And a lot of times you'll notice that the piping used for that particular method is purple. That's to give everybody the indication and the knowledge that that is reclaimed water and not for consumption. Another form of non-potable water is for use in buildings and industry, building air conditioning systems per se, equipment, like I said, industry, science labs. It's anything that is used for, there again, equipment. In the air conditioning business, we have equipment called boilers. We have heating hot water boilers. We have steam boilers. We have chillers to make air conditioning for your comfort, and also cooling towers that help in the air conditioning process. Each one of these systems has their own particular needs as far as when you heat water up, it depletes the water of certain minerals, so it needs to be chemically treated, and that would be considered, like in the steam system, there is steam and condensate, and so you have to replenish the water with certain minerals to keep the water to where it does not become corrosive in nature. That protects the equipment and the piping. The same goes for the condenser water in the air conditioning system. If you have an open cell cooling tower, that water is exposed to atmosphere during the process of its loop or circulation. So the water becomes very oxygenated. And during that process, it loses a lot of its principles. It also attracts and gathers microorganisms such as algae. So that has to be treated to minimize that. The other systems, the heating hot water and the chilled water systems, are both closed loop systems. So once they're full, and the water has been treated to protect the pipes and cleaned, then there's no need to add additional water unless there's a leak or work has been done to the system to change it. In San Diego County, the San Diego County Water Authority maintains and oversees about 310 miles of main water pipeline, anything under 48-inch, all the way up to 120-inch pipe. 120-inch, this 10-foot diameter pipe. That's incredible. The things that I would like for everybody to get out of this presentation are things that we take for granted sometimes and we don't necessarily consider when we're washing cars or doing laundry or letting the water just run in our sink. There's a lot of work that comes to it. There's a lot of steps and precautions. And it's quite an ordeal to get water to us in this, semi-desert area that we live in. So when you see on the ballot, there's going to be another tax or a bond measure for raising water taxes. Nobody likes to pay more taxes. But if you've noticed on the news and in the paper, you'll see it's not very uncommon to see a water main break in this part of the city or in that part of the city because our infrastructure is pretty old and it's become heavily taxed. It breaks periodically and then it takes a whole big deal to dig it all up, make the repair, re-sterilize it to where it's good for public consumption. It's a pretty big deal. So I would encourage people to be informed and be wise about our water usage and also just be good stewards of our drinking water that we have provided to us. And consider the next time you take a glass of water, such as this one, and you enjoy it, just maybe take a second and look at it and think of all the work, the hard work that people do, the steps that it takes to bring you cool, clear, fresh, clean drinking water. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. God bless.